demanding climate change. And also, how about the CNN live shot interrupted by hecklers? There's more and more of that. Again, those are just some of the headlines from the Drudge Report. Let's go back to the phones. Line 4. Speaking of South Carolina, Peter, once again, is in South Carolina listening to the Savage Nation on WTMA. Peter, once again, go right ahead. You're on the Savage Nation, Peter.
Thanks for having me back, John. I just want to make three quick points, and they're kind of gimmies to a lot of questions that are going around. And one that I want to ask that nobody seems to be asking. One, we know he was mental. I mean, you give him, a gun to a monkey, he's going to end up shooting people for himself. Two, it was definitely a political issue. He asked who the pastor was, knowing that he was a state senator, and executed him. Third, it's a racial issue. I mean, the guy did make comments, that he made that saying that, it's got to happen because he felt that blacks were taking over the country. My fourth question that nobody seems to ask.
What's that?
Is why did he choose Charleston, South Carolina? There's got to be a reason why he drove, 2.5 hours and picked that church, knowing that the pastor would be in there on a Wednesday night. That's the question I want to ask, and nobody seems to be asking it.
Thank you for the call, Peter. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe we'll find out. I know that when he was visiting a childhood friend, they wondered why he was in that area. Let's stay in South Carolina. Line 8, Brian is also listening on WTMA. Brian, this is John DePietro, and you're on the Savage Nation. Hello, Brian.
Thank you. I can answer that for you. Wednesday nights are usually prayer nights in a lot of churches around here. Also, the uprising of Denmark Vesey in 1822, he was a member of that church. And the church was burnt down afterwards and rebuilt.
Now, Brian, did you know any of the victims from this?
Yes. One of them was a friend of mine. We used to work together at the library. I used to do programs for her. I just spoke with her last week when I ran into her at the library. Oddly enough, I was down there across the street from the church about 5 or 6 hours before this happened. I'm a tour guide, and I was down there with some folks, and I was even talking about the church. It's one of our landmarks. It's the oldest AME church in the South. And
Brian, what can you tell us about your friend? I mean, it sounded like a wonderful group of people. This is just horrific what happened.
She was an outstanding person. She was truly a good person. An example to others. It's a void. It's just an absolute void. And I didn't find out till a few hours ago that happened. She was involved, but I had a bad feeling about something.
Did you? Well, what else can you tell us, Brian? Anything else that we should know about what happened?
Well, the gentleman said a few people back saying, that there's not that much of a conflict down there, and there isn't. I've lived here most of my life. I've also lived all over this country and overseas, and I can tell you, I've lived in other places where, if they had the gun, they'd shoot you. It's not the gun thing; it's just the person thing. I mean, for crying out loud, if David could kill Goliath with a rock, then let's outlaw rocks.
Well, at the same, Brian, thank you for the call. I mean, at the same time, though. I mean, it's not this business of he allegedly told ABC News. He's a friend of his told ABC News. Oh yeah, Dylan, the accused shooter, he wanted to start a race war. He, someone riding around with a Confederate flag on their license plate and wearing these apartheid jackets. You don't see that. I've also traveled all over the country. That's something that you see in the South. You don't see that in other parts of the country. You don't see that in the Northeast. You don't see that in the Midwest. That is something that is something that you see in the South. Let's go to line 1. Tyler is listening on KKOH in Reno. Tyler, this is John DePietro, and you're up on the Savage Nation. Hello, Tyler.
Hi. You're so wrong about that Confederate flag thing. I can't believe you're saying that sort of thing.
What am I wrong about?
I'm telling you, I'm a life member of the Sons of Confederate Veterans. That's a group of about 50,000 citizens from the age of 21 on up to about 90.
Which part am I wrong about?
Well, the people that display the Confederate flag, in my experience, have been people who are very in touch with their traditions and their culture.
Traditions?
And the Sons of Confederates spend a great deal of time and money preserving cemeteries and repairing vandalism to monuments all across this country.
What part was I wrong about? The only place you see that flag is in the South.
Not true at all.
Where do you see the Confederate flag?
I live in Wisconsin, and people routinely display the battle flag, which is the one that you typically heard that's got the X with the stars on it. And they, when I asked them, I said, are you folks from the South? And in most cases, they weren't from the South. They just
losers? The
battle flag as being a way of expressing what they would call typically the rebel spirit.
So if you're a group of 9 black people and you're sitting there and somebody comes in with a weird look in their eye and a bowl cut and they have a Confederate flag in their license plate, you're saying that those people have nothing to worry about?
If someone is...
if I were black and somebody showed up and they got a Confederate flag on the license plate, I would get nervous the same way if you were traveling overseas and there were a group of Pakistanis on your plane.
Well, that's just prejudice on your part.
No. How is that prejudice? That's not prejudice.
Yes,
you don't even know what words you're talking about.
You're talking about somebody having a thought in their head based on their ethnicity, and that's the definition of prejudice.
No, it is not. It's called profiling.
Somebody has a battle.
Who commits the acts? You're totally wrong. You don't even know what you're talking about.
Well, if you think that.
What do you? Enough. Thank you, Tyler. That's not racist. Why do you think then they screen people like that at the airport? There's a certain profile that they look for. It's called profiling, and it can work both ways. I mean, as much as everyone wants to talk about profiling, as far as white people profiling blacks, I mean, people profile other people. Let me ask you, when those people were in Texas, and you had the motorcycle gangs rolling in, and somebody said, I feel a little nervous. Did somebody else say, what reason would you have to be nervous on? Why, because all these people are coming in with all the tattoos and the motorcycle gang? Why, is there going to be a problem? You had 9 shot dead in the sports bar. Or were there more than that? There's nothing wrong with sometimes using senses. Yeah, people in Wisconsin had a Confederate flag. I mean, how desperate can you be? But birds of a feather. Remember that, birds of a feather. So if you're hanging around with losers in Wisconsin that have a Confederate flag, that is not. In any situation, if there is some kind of a terrorist threat, there is a link most of the time, and I was going to say on an airplane, of Middle Eastern men. That was the hijackers. Now, I know people like to say, well, what about a Timothy McVeigh? But we're talking about predominantly of what someone falls into. And profiling goes on all the time. But again, I'm not talking about people think it's racial profiling just applies to someone of color. So this guy, just when he was at the mall, he was making people uncomfortable. The Colorado shooter, by his actions, made people uncomfortable. The shooter in Arizona that shot Congresswoman Gabby Giffords, you look at him. Yeah, he's white, and he was a nut looking like that. 1-855-400-SAVAGE. 1-855-400-7282. Line 9 is Ginger, listening on WDRC in Connecticut. Ginger, you're up on the Savage Nation. Hello, Ginger.
Hi, how are you?
Very well, Ginger. Go right ahead.
First of all, my heart goes out to everybody and all the families, and you'll be in my prayers. Secondly, I just feel as though the president, we don't care about him being tired. He needs to come up with a sound solution before he nationally gets on the air and starts, just saying this, that, and the other. He's adding fuel to the fire. That's pretty much all I have to say.
Ginger, this has been racial tension building with all the protests, whether it be in Ferguson or Baltimore. And I don't know what's going to happen now. I don't think anyone does. But when you have a deranged lone gunman that apparently, according to ABC News, told a friend that he wanted to start a civil war and walks into a black Bible study group and massacres 9 innocent people. there's going to be some fallout from that, to say the very least. I don't know what's going to happen this summer, but I agree with Ginger. The president does not seem to be bringing the country together. The race situation seems to be getting worse. The racial divide. Let's go to line 3. Mike is in Phoenix, listening on KFNX. Mike, this is John DePietro, and you're up on the Savage Nation. Hello, Mike.
Hello. On Tuesday, there was a report that was released that said 121 Americans that had been killed by illegal aliens that were let out of prison by Obama, and there's scant news coverage. Now we have 9 people killed in a church, and it's wall-to-wall coverage, and the usual, knee-jerk reaction to ban all the firearms. And it's right on cue for their summer of rage. I know when Obama was over in this G7 deal, and they asked him, but he said that they had no complete strategy for fighting ISIS. But now all of a sudden he's got a complete strategy for this issue.
Well, I haven't heard about that element of it, Mike. Now, listen, whenever someone gets killed, or illegal aliens, you say, kill Americans, I mean, it does make news, but you can't say that a young 21-year-old white gunman allegedly walks into a black church of a Bible study group and says, I'm here to kill black people, and then think that, why? Of course it's going to be major news, and it's going to remain major news for quite some time. 1-855-400-SAVAGE, 1-855-400-7282. Don't forget about our website. It's michaelsavage.com. Again, this is John DePietro sitting in for Dr. Michael Savage, and this is the Savage Nation.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
Hey, our Savage Nation is sponsored by SwissAmerica.com, the only company I trust for wealth insurance, gold and silver. Call 800-BUICOIN.
You're listening to the Savage Nation. This is John DePietro sitting in for Dr. Michael Savage. Dr. Savage will be back tomorrow. Taking your phone calls at 1-855-400-SAVAGE, 1-855-400-7282. As always, the website is michaelsavage.com. President Obama talking about these types of shootings don't happen in other countries. Well, we have France, where the Islamists murdered 12 members of the staff of the Charlie Hebdo magazine. How about July 2011? Norway, 77 killed. September 2008, Finland, 10 people killed. You also have, in April 2002, in Germany, how about the guy been expelled from school, kills 13 teachers, 2 former classmates, and a policeman. We're going to find out more about the alleged shooter in Charleston, South Carolina. But it's not just this just goes on in America. Let's go to line 7. Robert is listening on KSFO. Robert, you're up on the Savage Nation. Hello.
Hey, John. Great job filling in.
Thank you. Doctor, we'll be back tomorrow.
Just wanted to make a couple of points here. If you type in any web browser, violent crime drops 50% in the USA, you will see that over the last 20, 30 years, depending upon what type of studies you look at, the crime has dropped dramatically from gun murders to violent gun crimes within the United States. But yet it's like this administration just pushes this narrative nonstop that gun violence is up. And even if you look on the Internet and you do searches, and you do a search to see whether or not gun violence is up in the United States, you see mainstream media all across the United States just pushing this narrative. Gun violence is out of control.
Right. No, and it certainly came out of the White House. Again, check out the website, michaelsavage.com. This is John DePietro sitting in for Dr. Michael Savage. You've been listening to the Savage Nation.
Savage.